The snow fell in relentless sheets over the cobblestone streets of old Chicago, turning the city into a ghost of itself on Christmas Eve. Streetlights flickered like dying stars, casting long shadows on the facades of brick warehouses along the Chicago River. The air bit with a chill that seeped through wool coats and silenced the usual hum of holiday traffic. Vincenzo Russo, known in the shadowed corners of the underworld as the Bear, steered his black Escalade through the slushy back alleys, his gloved hands tight on the wheel. At 42, he was a man built from iron and regret, broad-shouldered, with a jaw scarred from a long-ago knife fight and eyes that missed nothing. Tonight, he was alone, his usual security detail dismissed for the holiday. Family first, even for a man whose family was the syndicate that owned half the docks. The radio crackled with a faint rendition of Silent Night, but Vincenzo muted it, his mind on the ledger in the passenger seat. Shipments from the ports, crates of electronics that were anything but, needed his sign-off before the new year. Rivals from the east side were sniffing too close, whispers of betrayed alliances, floating like the fog off the river. He rounded a corner near the old steel mills, the massive skeletons of rusted girders looming like forgotten sentinels, when a sound pierced the quiet. Not the wind, but a child's wail, high and broken, echoing from the riverbank. Vincenzo slowed, his instincts flaring. The river was a no-man's land at night, patrolled by his own men in shifts, but this stretch was unguarded, a blind spot between the docks and the rail yards. He killed the engine and stepped out, boots crunching on ice-crusted gravel. The wind whipped snow into his face, carrying the metallic tang of the water and something sharper, fear. There, huddled against a concrete barrier half buried in drifts, were 3 small figures. Kids. No older than 8 or 9, their coats too thin for the cold, faces streaked with tears and grime. The oldest, a girl with tangled dark hair, clutched a younger boy to her chest, while a toddler girl whimpered at their feet, her tiny hands blue from the chill. "What the hell?" Vincenzo muttered, his breath fogging the air. He approached slowly, hands visible, voice low like coaxing a skittish animal. "Hey, Piccolini, you lost?" The girl looked up, eyes wide with terror, but she didn't run. "They're coming back," she whispered, voice trembling. "The bad men. They left us here." The boy buried his face deeper, sobbing, while the toddler sucked her thumb, staring at Vincenzo with unnerving calm. Vincenzo's gut twisted. Abandoned kids on Christmas Eve. This wasn't some junky family meltdown. The riverbank was too deliberate a drop-off, away from the main roads where cops patrolled. He scanned the shadows, empty, but the hair on his neck rose. His world didn't deal in innocence, but his code did. No kids, no women, no unnecessary blood. A vow carved from the loss of his own sister decades ago, gunned down in a crossfire he couldn't prevent. He knelt, shrugging off his overcoat and wrapping it around the toddler. "Who's coming back? Your parents?" The girl shook her head fiercely. "Not parents. Strangers. They took us from the shelter. Said we'd be warm for Christmas. But then..." She trailed off, glancing at a crumpled paper clutched in her fist, a faded flyer for a downtown orphanage, stamped with an address he recognized. St. Agnes's, a place his organization quietly funded to keep the streets clean of desperate recruits. Vincenzo's mind raced. Shelters didn't just lose kids. Someone had orchestrated this. He lifted the toddler gently, her weight featherlight against his chest, and nodded to the girl. "Come on, my car's warm. We'll get you inside." They followed, hesitant, the boy sniffling as he climbed into the back seat. Vincenzo cranked the heat, the dashboard glowing like a hearth, and pulled out his burner phone. No calls yet, not until he knew more. The kid's story didn't add up. The orphanage was miles away, and no storm would drive anyone to dump children here without purpose. As the Escalade purred back toward the city lights, the girl spoke again, voice barely above the engine's hum. "Mister, you look like him. The man on TV, the one who owns the big houses." Vincenzo's grip tightened on the wheel. Word traveled fast in his world, even to street urchins. He glanced in the rear view, catching her eyes, sharp, assessing. "What's your name, kid?" "Luca," she said, then corrected. I'm Sophia. That's Marco and little Rosa." Lies layered thin as the snow. Luca was his own middle name, a slip that meant something. He filed it away, the first thread in an unraveling knot. They reached his penthouse on the Gold Coast 20 minutes later. The doorman's nod the only greeting as Vincenzo carried Rosa inside. The lobby smelled of pine from the massive Christmas tree, lights twinkling against marble floors. His private elevator whisked them up, the hum soothing the children's whimpers. The penthouse was a fortress, bulletproof glass overlooking the lake, security cameras in every corner. But tonight it felt hollow, echoes of his empty life bouncing off the walls. In the kitchen, Vincenzo set out hot chocolate from the stocked pantry, the steam rising like a promise. Sophia sipped hers, eyes darting to the floor-to-ceiling windows where snow blurred the skyline. "You won't let them take us again, will you?" she asked, a plea wrapped in steel. He leaned against the counter, arms crossed, the weight of unseen eyes pressing in. His own surveillance feeds would show if anyone tailed him, but doubt gnawed. Why these kids? And why shatter the holiday peace with their cries? "No," he said firmly, "not on my watch." But as Marco yawned and Rosa drifted off on the couch, Vincenzo spotted it, a small tattoo on Sophia's wrist, peeking from her sleeve. Not a birthmark, but ink, a serpent coiled around a rose. His family's mark, faded but unmistakable, from the old guard who'd vanished years ago. The realization hit like a slug to the chest. These weren't random strays. They were echoes of a buried past, kids tied to a betrayal he'd thought long dead. Who had sent them to his door, and what price would he pay to unravel the truth? Down in the lobby, unnoticed in the holiday hush, a figure in a hooded coat slipped a phone from his pocket, dialing a number that connected straight to the east side. "He's got them!" The voice rasped into the night. "The boss has the ghosts now." Vincenzo stood frozen in the penthouse kitchen, the steam from the untouched mugs curling like ghosts in the dim light. The tattoo on Sophia's wrist burned in his mind. A serpent coiled around a rose, the emblem of the old Russo guard, inked into the skin of loyalists who'd sworn blood oaths decades ago. It was no child's doodle. The lines were deliberate, faded from time, but etched with the precision of a ritual. His own forearm bore a similar mark, hidden under layers of wool and scar tissue, a reminder of the family empire he'd clawed back from ruin after his father's assassination. But these kids? They were too young, too fragile for such a brand. Who had marked them, and why drag them through the snow to his doorstep? He turned away from the counter, forcing his voice steady as he knelt beside the couch where Rosa slept, her tiny chest rising and falling under his overcoat. Marco had curled up next to her, thumb in mouth, exhaustion claiming him despite the fear. Sophia watched Vincenzo with those sharp eyes, her mug clutched like a shield. The penthouse's underfloor heating hummed softly, battling the draft from the sealed windows, but the air carried the faint, acrid scent of city smoke seeping through the vents. Outside, the lakefront lights smeared into a hazy glow, Chicago's holiday facade masking the undercurrents of deals and debts. "Show me your wrist again," Vincenzo said, not a command but an invitation, his tone low to avoid startling the boys. Sophia hesitated, then extended her arm, pulling back the frayed sleeve. The ink was unmistakable, though crudely applied, perhaps by an amateur in some backroom hideout. "Where'd you get this?" She yanked her hand back, rubbing the spot as if it itched. "It hurts when it's cold. The man who gave it to us said it was for protection, like a family sign." Her words tumbled out, guarded but laced with the rhythm of street survival. Protection? In his world, that mark meant ownership, a chain disguised as loyalty. Vincenzo's pulse quickened. The old guard had dissolved after a brutal turf war 15 years back, their remnants scattered or silenced. If these kids bore the symbol, someone was resurrecting ghosts, maybe to leverage him, or worse, to expose fractures in his current alliances. He straightened, glancing at the wall of screens in the adjacent office, their feeds cycling through the building's cameras. Empty lobby, snow-swept garage, the doorman's post unmanned for the night. No tails visible, but Vincenzo knew better than to trust the quiet. His burner phone buzzed once, an encrypted text from his underboss, Gino. "Holiday shipment secure. You good?" He typed back, "Change of plans. Eyes on the penthouse. No details yet. Trust was earned, not broadcast." "Sophia," he said, pouring himself a black coffee from the machine, the bitter aroma grounding him. "Tell me about the shelter. St. Agnes's. How'd you end up there?" He sat across from her at the island, the marble cool under his elbows, keeping distance to ease her tension. She fidgeted, eyes flicking to the sleeping siblings. "We weren't always there. Mama died last winter. Flu or something. Papa. He worked the docks, loading crates at night. Then he didn't come home one morning. The shelter took us in after that. But Christmas, they said we'd get families. Instead, those men came. 2 of them, in a van with no plates. Said they had a better place, warm beds and toys. We went 'cause Rosa was crying for food." Her voice cracked on the last word, and Vincenzo saw the tell. A subtle flinch, like reciting a rehearsed line with a hidden edge. Docks. His docks. Vincenzo's mind mapped it. St. Agnes's was a buffer zone, funded by his discretionary slush to keep social workers off the real operations. A van with no plates screamed insider job. His crews rotated vehicles weekly, burners for everything. If Papa loaded crates, he might have been one of the low-level mules, silenced for skimming or talking. But the tattoo, that tied back further, to the era when his uncle, the last old guard enforcer, ran the river runs with an iron fist. The coffee turned sour in his mouth. His code, no innocence, clashed against the syndicate's grind, where loose ends like a dock worker's family could become pawns. He'd lost his sister to that indifference, a 12-year-old caught in a drive-by meant for his father. Vowed never again. Yet here he was, 3 small lives dumped like contraband, forcing his hand. A soft chime echoed from the elevator, his private line, reserved for vetted arrivals. Vincenzo tensed, crossing to the control panel embedded in the wall. The screen showed Gino's face, snow-dusted coat, and furrowed brow. "Boss, you alone up there?" "Got company," Vincenzo replied through the intercom, buzzing him up. Gino entered moments later, stamping slush from his boots, his bulk filling the doorway. At 38, Gino was Vincenzo's right hand, loyal since the streets, with a shaved head and a limp from a botched hit years back. He scanned the room, nodding at the kids without surprise. In their world, strays washed up like river debris. "Family trouble?" Gino asked, voice a gravel rumble, as he shrugged off his coat. The scent of wet wool and cigarette smoke followed him. Vincenzo jerked his head toward Sophia. "Show him." She complied warily, and Gino's eyes narrowed, leaning in under the pendant light that cast harsh shadows across his face. "Merda," Gino muttered, tracing the air above the tattoo without touching. "Old ink. Your uncle's crew used that before the split. Thought it died with them." He straightened, glancing at Vincenzo with the weight of shared history. The split, when rival factions carved up the north side, leaving bodies and bad blood. Rumors had swirled of turncoats selling out the Russos for East Side promises. Sophia piped up, voice small but steady. "The men who took us, they had the same mark, but bigger, on their necks. Said we'd be safe if we behaved." Vincenzo exchanged a look with Gino. Neck tattoos were enforcer level, visible warnings. If East Siders were resurrecting the old guard symbols, it was a declaration, poaching his legacy to undermine him. But why the kids? Leverage? Or bait to draw him out on a night when his guard was down? Gino pulled out his own phone, a secure model with encrypted apps. I'll run the shelter logs. Cross with doc manifests. See if this papa rings bells. But boss, if they're using kids? He trailed off, the implication hanging. Retaliation for the whispers of betrayed alliances, or a deeper play to shatter the bear's unyielding front. Vincenzo nodded, watching Sofia tuck a blanket around Rosa. The penthouse, once a sanctuary of polished isolation, now pulsed with unseen threats. The hum of the HVAC like distant footsteps, the snow outside muffling any approach. He felt the pull of autonomy against the syndicate's code. Protect his own, even these unexpected ghosts, or risk the empire crumbling under personal cracks. As Gino stepped into the office to make calls, his voice a low murmur blending with the city drone, Vincenzo knelt by Sofia again. You did good coming with me. But there's more to this. Men who play games with families. She met his gaze, a spark of recognition flickering. For a moment, the weight of legacy pressed down, his vow tested by the fragility before him. Then from the screens, a flicker, the lobby camera glitching for a split second, a shadow lingering where none should be. Had someone breached the feeds? Or was it just the storm playing tricks? Vincenzo's hand went to his sidearm, hidden in the drawer, as the first real doubt settled in. What if the ghosts weren't just at his door, but already inside? Vincenzo's fingers closed around the drawer handle, the cool metal grounding him as he slid it open. The sidearm, a compact Glock, matte black and heavy with purpose, felt like an extension of his will, but he didn't draw it yet. Not with the kids in the room. The penthouse's office screens flickered again, the lobby feed stabilizing to show nothing but the empty expanse of marble and the Christmas tree's lights winking mockingly. A glitch from the storm? Or sabotage? Chicago's winter winds could scramble signals, but Vincenzo's system was hardened, fiber optics buried deep, redundancies for blackouts. He tapped the intercom, voice a controlled growl. Gino, get in here. Now. Gino emerged from the office doorway, phone still in hand, his limp more pronounced on the polished floors. What's up, boss? He followed Vincenzo's gaze to the screens, brow furrowing under the recessed lighting that cast elongated shadows across the walls. The air hummed with the faint whir of the HVAC, pulling in filtered warmth against the gale howling outside, but it carried an undercurrent of unease, like the distant rumble of freight trains along the lakefront. Feed just dropped, Vincenzo said, pulling up the diagnostics on a tablet synced to the system. Lines of code scrolled, green mostly, but a red flag blinked. Unauthorized access ping from an external IP, masked through a proxy. Not the storm. Someone probing his defenses. East Side Tech, maybe. Or one of ours gone rogue. He glanced at Sofia, who had edged closer to the couch, her small frame tense as she watched Marco stir in his sleep. Rosa mumbled something incoherent, clutching the blanket's edge. These kids weren't just witnesses. They were the spark, drawing flames he hadn't anticipated. Gino nodded, slipping into enforcer mode, his broad frame blocking the doorway like a sentinel. I'll loop in the night crew. Double the patrols on the garage levels. Cameras there are analog, harder to hack. He punched a quick text, the phone's glow illuminating the scar across his knuckles from a bar fight long past. Loyalty like Gino's was rare in their world, forged in the fires of shared betrayals, but even he carried the weight of suspicion. Vincenzo trusted him, yet the glitch gnawed. Internal leaks had toppled lesser bosses, a whisper here, a tampered feed there. Keep it quiet, Vincenzo instructed, holstering the Glock under his sweater. The fabric whispered against the leather, a sound lost in the penthouse's vastness. He turned back to Sophia, softening his stance. You ever see anyone fiddling with phones or cameras around the shelter? Men asking questions? She shook her head slowly, but her eyes darted. A tell, the subtle avoidance of a kid who'd learned to measure words like rations. Mostly ladies there. But one time, a guy came with papers. Tall, with a limp-like. She trailed off, glancing at Gino, who froze mid-step. Gino cleared his throat, forcing a chuckle that didn't reach his eyes. Old war wound, kid. Nothing fancy. But Vincenzo caught the flicker, the way Gino's hand twitched toward his pocket. Coincidence? Or a thread pulling tighter? The docks, the shelter, now this. Pieces of a puzzle designed to unsettle, to make him question his inner circle. Vincenzo steered the conversation back, pouring Sophia a fresh mug of water from the fridge, the ice clinking like distant warnings. Your papa, what did he look like? Any marks like yours? He kept his voice even, the kitchen's pendant lights warming the scene, but the scent of coffee lingered, bitter as unresolved debts. Sophia sipped, buying time. Dark hair like Marco, he had a tattoo too on his shoulder, a ship with the snake around it. Said it was from his old job before the crates got heavy. Her words landed like snow on embers, igniting Vincenzo's memory. The ship motif, old guard variant, used by the river runners who'd handled smuggling before the feds cracked down. If her father was one of them, resurfacing now meant trouble. A ghost from the split, perhaps flipped to the East Siders, using his kids as unwitting bait. Gino's phone buzzed, pulling him aside. He stepped into the hallway, voice muffled but urgent. Vincenzo strained to listen, the low murmur of manifests. Yeah, matches the name. Dumped last week. When Gino returned, his face was granite. Boss, got a hit. Shelter logs show a Matteo Rossi checked the kids in 6 months back. Dock worker, low tier, last manifest. He loaded a shipment 2 nights ago, electronics from the East Pier, but it went missing. No trace, no body. And get this, his employee file has a note. Old affiliation, monitor. Vincenzo's jaw tightened, the pieces slotting with grim precision. Rossi could be a plant, feeding intel on Vincenzo's operations, or a pawn silenced to frame him. The tattoo on the kid screamed resurrection of the old guard, a psychological jab at his legacy. His code demanded protection, but autonomy clashed. Diving deeper meant exposing the syndicate's veins, risking the empire for 3 fragile lives, yet turning away. That would shatter the vow etched from his sister's blood, the personal rule that kept the bare human amid the grind. Sophia watched him, her small hand tracing the tattoo absently. Papa said the mark meant family, real family, not the kind that leaves you in the snow. Her words pierced, a child's echo of his own regrets. Vincenzo knelt, meeting her gaze level. It does. And family's what we make it, even in the cold. For a moment, possessiveness stirred. Not the syndicate's grip, but a fierce urge to shield them, autonomy yielding to something rawer. The screens chimed again, this time the garage feed. A black sedan idling at the barrier, plates obscured by snow. No breach, but the engine's purr cut through the storm's howl, headlights slicing the dark like accusations. Gino moved to the window, peering through the frost-etched glass. Unmarked. Could be lost. Or scouting. Vincenzo's hand returned to the Glock, the penthouse's sanctuary fracturing. If the East Siders were this bold, the kids weren't bait. They were the weapon, forcing his hand into the open. But as Rosa whimpered awake, reaching for him instinctively, doubt deepened. Was the real threat outside, or the fracture widening within his trusted walls? If you're enjoying this story so far, tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching from. Vincenzo scooped Rosa up before her whimpers could escalate, her small body warm against his chest, despite the chill that seemed to cling to her like a shadow. The toddler nestled into his shoulder, her thumb finding her mouth again, the faint scent of hot chocolate and baby shampoo mingling with the penthouse's polished leather and pine from the lobby tree below. He rocked her gently, the motion automatic, pulling from memories he'd buried deep. Nights pacing with his sister after storms, promising safety in a world that rarely delivered. But safety was fracturing now. The Glocks weighed a cold reminder at his hip as the garage feed on the screens showed the black sedan lingering, its exhaust clouding the camera like a veiled threat. Gino hovered by the window, his breath fogging the glass in short bursts, the sodium lights from the street below painting his face in stark contrasts. Plates are fake, snow's covering the numbers, but the make's a Lincoln, East Side favorite for runners. Want me to send a car down? Quiet sweep, no lights. Vincenzo waited, Rosa's heartbeat a steady thrum against his own. A sweep could spook them off, but it might confirm the probe, drawing more eyes to his building. His code demanded caution with innocence, but prudence screamed to fortify, autonomy clashing with the syndicate's web of favors and fears. Hold, watch the exit points. If it moves toward the river roads, tail it. No engagement. He shifted Rosa to one arm, freeing his hand to tap the tablet, zooming the feed. The sedan's driver was a silhouette, hood up, but a glint, maybe a phone screen, flashed before the vehicle peeled away, tires hissing on slush. Sophia had roused Marco, the boy rubbing his eyes with balled fists, the blanket pooling around them like surrendered snow. "Is it them?" she whispered, voice edged with the steel of survival, her tattooed wrist peaking as she pulled him close. The question hung, amplifying the hum of the elevator shaft in the silence, a mechanical whisper that could herald allies or intruders. "Not yet," Vincenzo replied, setting Rosa down beside them with a pillow fort of cushions. The penthouse's vast living area felt smaller now, walls closing in under the weight of what-ifs. The lake view a blurred canvas of white and black, wind rattling the reinforced panes like impatient fingers. He needed answers, not alarms. The kids were the key, but pressing too hard risked breaking them. "Sophia, that van from the shelter, what color? Any marks on it like stickers or dents?" she thought, biting her lip, the gesture pulling at Vincenzo's chest, a mirror to his sister's habits, long gone. Blue, old Ford, rust on the side like a big bite taken out. The driver had a gold chain, snake pendant dangling from the mirror. Marco nodded faintly, adding, "Smelled like fish inside." And they played loud music to cover the crying. Fish, the river dock's signature rot, carried on clothes and boots from the warehouses where Vincenzo's crews processed imports. Crates that hid more than electronics. Gino, listening from the window, straightened. "Boss, that fits the manifests." Rossi's last load was from the East Pier Fish Market front. Legit cover for the smaller hauls. If the van's theirs, someone's mixing personal scores with business. Vincenzo's mind raced, piecing the logistics. A low-level worker like Rossi, marked with old guard ink, vanishes after a missing shipment. Kids dumped on his route, bearing the same symbol. It reeked of orchestration, a rival faction resurrecting ghosts to bait him into overreach, testing his code against the Empire's survival. Legacy wasn't just blood. It was the vows that bound it, like the one he'd made over his sister's grave. Protect the vulnerable, even if it cost territory. But trust, that was fracturing, suspicion coiling tighter than the serpent tattoo. "Get the van's description to our street eyes," Vincenzo told Gino, voice low as he guided the kids toward the guest wing, away from the screens. The hallway's track lighting cast elongated shadows, the carpet muffling their steps, but the air carried the faint ozone tang of the building's electrical systems straining against the storm. And pull Rossi's full file, family history, known associates. If he's old guard, there'll be overlaps. Gino nodded, already dialing, his limp echoing softly as he retreated to the office. The door clicked shut, leaving Vincenzo with the children, their presence a tether pulling him from the bear's armored isolation. Sophia trailed him, Marco's hand in hers, Rosa toddling behind with a stuffed bear he'd pulled from a drawer. Ironic. Soft fur against his hardened world. In the guest suite, he flicked on the lamp, its warm glow chasing the chill, the room smelling of fresh linens and the vanilla diffuser his cleaner insisted on. Rest here, door locks from inside. I'll be close. Sophia climbed onto the bed, tucking the boys in, but her eyes lingered on him. You have the mark too, don't you? Under your shirt. Papa said only family gets it, that it keeps the bad away. Vincenzo paused at the threshold, the question probing like a blade. Possessiveness stirred, not the syndicate's grip, but a paternal urge to claim these strays as his own, autonomy yielding to the fear of loss. He rolled up his sleeve just enough, revealing the faded serpent on his forearm, the rose thorn sharp in the lamplight. Yeah. Family's what you fight for. Sleep now. I'll handle the bad. As he closed the door, the locks click a small victory. His burner buzzed. Gino's text. Rossi file, widow listed, but no kids on record. Old guard initiate, defected post-split. Last sighting, arguing with East Side lieutenant at the Blue Heron warehouse. Van matches, spotted twice this week. The Blue Heron. Vincenzo's neutral ground for meats now compromised. Betrayal's scent grew stronger. Human error or deliberate turncoat, the kind that toppled codes under pressure. He returned to the living room, the screens now showing reinforced patrols circling the block, taillights cutting red streaks through the snow. But as he poured a scotch, the burn steadying his pulse, a new alert pinged. Motion in the service tunnel below the building, a restricted access for maintenance. No scheduled crews on Christmas Eve. Vincenzo's grip tightened on the glass, the ice clinking like a warning bell. Had the fracture spread that deep, inside the walls where cameras didn't reach? Or was it just a rat in the storm, innocent but timed to shatter his fragile peace? Vincenzo set the scotch down untouched, the crystal clinking against the marble bar like a suppressed gunshot. The alert on the tablet pulsed red, insistent as a heartbeat, pulling his gaze back to the auxiliary screens. The service tunnel feed was grainy. Low-res backup cameras wired for emergencies, their infrared glow painting the concrete bowels in ghostly greens and blacks. Motion. A figure, blurred but human-shaped, slipping past a junction box near the utility access. No face, no uniform, just the hunch of someone who knew to avoid the main lights. The storm above raged on, wind howling through the vents like a siren's call. But down there, the air would be stale, laced with the metallic drip of pipes and the faint rot of the lake seeping in. He moved silently to the office. Glock drawn now, the grip familiar in his palm, suppressor threaded on for discretion. Gino looked up from his laptop, the screen's blue light etching lines deeper into his face. Tunnel breach? Vincenzo asked, voice a thread of steel. Gino nodded, already rising, his limp a soft scrape on the floor. Could be maintenance gone rogue. Storms knocked out half the grid downtown. But yeah, flagged it same time as you. He grabbed his own piece from the desk drawer, a Beretta with a worn handle, checking the mag with practiced efficiency. The office smelled of overheated electronics and Gino's aftershave, a mundane anchor amid the escalating storm. Vincenzo glanced toward the guest suite door, cracked just enough to hear the kids' soft breathing, Sophia's watchful silence, Marco's occasional snuffle, Rosa's thumb-sucking rhythm. Leaving them alone twisted something in his gut, the bear's iron code bending under the weight of unearned trust. You take the kids, barricade if needed. I'll check the tunnel. Quick recon. It wasn't a request. In their world, orders flowed like river current, but Gino's eyes held a flicker of protest, loyalty warring with prudence. Boss, that's suicide without backup. Let me... No. Vincenzo cut him off, holstering the Glock but keeping the tablet clipped to his belt. You're marked now. That limp Sophia mentioned? Coincidence ends tonight. The words hung, suspicion coiling like the serpent ink, born from the night's unraveling threads. Gino's flinch was subtle, a tightening of the jaw. Eyes dropping to the floor, but Vincenzo filed it, another behavioral tell in a ledger of doubts. Internal betrayals started small, a glance, a hesitation, a shared scar that suddenly felt like a liability. Gino exhaled, nodding once. Copy. I'll seal the penthouse, override the elevator, arm the panic room if it hits. He clapped Vincenzo's shoulder, the grip firm but fleeting, before heading to the suite. The door clicked shut behind him, leaving Vincenzo alone in the office's hush, the distant hum of generators vibrating through the walls like an approaching convoy. He took the service elevator down, a freight model tucked in the building's core, its descent a groaning rattle that masked his pulse. The doors opened to the sub-basement, cold air rushing in like a slap. Damp concrete, the sharp tang of chlorine from the pool filters above, and the underlying must of disuse. Sodium lights buzzed overhead, casting pools of yellow on grated floors, shadows twisting like live wires. Vincenzo moved low, boots silent on the mesh, Glock at the ready. The tunnel branched left to the garage, right to the utility shafts linking to the street. Blind spots where deliveries slipped in under cover of night, a syndicate staple for avoiding Fed sweeps. The figure had vanished from the feed, but fresh scuff marks marred the floor. Rubber soles, not the hard treads of maintenance crews. Vincenzo followed, senses attuned, the drip-drip of a leak echoing like Morse code, the faint whine of wind through a grate, the acrid whiff of burned wiring suggesting sabotage. His code screamed caution, no innocence. But this intruder was no child. They were the threat, probing his fortress on Christmas Eve to exploit the holiday thinness of guards. A side door to the access tunnel stood ajar, steam hissing from a cracked valve, the air thickening with humidity that beaded on his skin. He eased it open, flashlight beam cutting the dark in a narrow arc. There, crouched by a junction panel, a man in dark coveralls, tools scattered, wire cutters, a jammer device blinking faintly. Mid-40s, wiry build, no visible tattoos, but the way he froze at the light screamed pro, East Side operative, trained to ghost through shadows without a ripple. "Hands up," Vincenzo growled, the Glock steady, suppressor glinting. "Slow." The man complied, rising with hands splayed, face obscured by a ski cap pulled low. "Easy, Russo. Just fixing a line." Storm took it out. His voice was calm, too calm, laced with the flat vowels of Southside Irish, not Italian stock. A lie? Thin as the steam curling around them. Vincenzo stepped closer, kicking the jammer aside. It skittered with a metallic clatter. "Storm doesn't carry East Side tech. Who sent you?" "The kids, Rossi. Talk." The names dropped like weights, testing for reaction. The man's eyes narrowed, a subtle tell in the infrared glow from Vincenzo's tablet, now propped to record. A beat of silence, broken only by the valve's hiss. Then, the intruder lunged, not at Vincenzo, but toward a red emergency lever on the wall, yanking it down. Alarms blared instantly, a deafening wail that echoed through the tunnels, lights strobing red. Backup protocols, flood the garage levels, lock external doors. Chaos designed to contain breaches, but it trapped Vincenzo too. The door slamming shut behind him with a pneumatic thud. The man bolted into the shadows, footsteps fading toward the street grate. Vincenzo pursued, Glock barking twice, suppressed pops lost in the din, but the figure melted away, a ghost in the maze. He cursed under his breath, pounding the release code into the panel. It jammed, the jammer's work, forcing a manual override that would take minutes. Minutes where Gino and the kids were exposed upstairs, the penthouse feeds likely scrambled now. As the alarms throbbed like a migraine, Vincenzo's mind raced. The intruder knew the layout, the levers, insider intel, perhaps from a turned guard or Gino's own network. Rossi's file burned in memory. If the dock worker had defected, his kids were the lure, drawing Vincenzo into a web of staged diversions. Legacy shattered not by bullets, but by the erosion of trust. His vow to protect clashing against the syndicate's inevitable fractures. He wrenched the panel free, sparks flying, the smell of scorched plastic sharp. The door groaned open just as his burner vibrated. Gino. All clear up top, kids safe, but east side chatter spiking. Your name's out there. Vincenzo holstered the Glock, ascending the shaft with grim resolve, the alarms fading behind him. But as the elevator dinged at the penthouse, a new doubt gnawed. If the breach was this deep, who else in his circle carried the serpent's shadow, waiting to strike? Vincenzo stepped from the elevator into the penthouse's antechamber, the alarm's echo still thrumming in his ears like a fading pulse. The air up here was warmer, laced with the vanilla from the diffuser, and the faint, comforting, yeasty scent of the kid's earlier hot chocolate. But it did little to ease the knot in his chest. His sweater clung damply to his skin from the tunnel's humidity, the Glock's holster digging into his side like an accusation. Gino waited in the living room, back to the windows, his silhouette framed against the snow-lashed lake, arms crossed over his broad chest. The screens cycled feeds smoothly now, patrols reinforced, no new breaches. But the intruder's escape gnawed at Vincenzo, a loose thread in his tightly woven world. Kids are locked down, Gino said, voice steady as he turned, the limp barely noticeable on the even floors. His eyes scanned Vincenzo head to toe, noting the sweat, the tension in the shoulders. What did you see down there? East Side ghost? Vincenzo peeled off his sweater, tossing it over a chair, the fabric landing with a soft thud. The room's underfloor heating radiated through his socks, but the chill lingered, bone deep from the sublevels. Wiry bastard, Irish accent, knew the levers, pulled the flood protocol to buy time. Jammer took out the panel. He's gone, but he knew where to hit. He moved to the bar, pouring 2 fingers of scotch this time, the amber liquid glinting under the pendant lights. The burner in his pocket buzzed again, street eyes confirming the sedan's route toward the east side warehouses. Plates traced to a shell company tied to the Blue Heron front. Logistics. A burner vehicle, swapped at a chop shop by dawn. Credible, but the insider knowledge screamed betrayal. Gino accepted the glass. Vincenzo slid across the marble, but didn't drink, his fingers drumming the rim. A tell Vincenzo clocked immediately, the subtle rhythm of unease. Chatter's hot, Gino continued, pulling up his phone. Intercepted texts from a East Side burner net. Bear's got the package. Move on the airs tonight. Vague, but it lines up with the kids. Rossi's file deep dive shows he was your uncle's runner back in the day. Inked during initiation. Defected after the split when the East Siders promised better cuts. No body, but a witness at the pier, saw him arguing with a lieutenant named Declan, the Irish connection. Declan runs the fish market cover. That van Sophia described? Registered to his crew. Vincenzo sipped the scotch, the burn sharpening his focus, eyes locked on Gino. The pieces slotted. Rossi, silenced for loose lips or a skimmed load. His kids marked as old guard to twist the knife, resurrecting Vincenzo's legacy as a taunt, forcing him to choose between code and caution. The tattoo on Sophia's wrist wasn't protection. It was a brand, a human ledger entry to pressure him into the open. But Gino's drumming fingers pulled his gaze. Sophia mentioned a limp, like yours. And now this Irish angle, Declan. You ever cross paths with him at the Blue Heron? Gino's hand stilled, the glass lowering slowly. The room's hush amplified the distant wind, rattling the windows like impatient knuckles. Boss, that was years back. Post-split cleanup. I handled a few meets, neutral ground. Limps from a warehouse slip, not some East Side souvenir. His tone held steady, but the eyes, flickering to the side, a microsecond avoidance, betrayed him. In their world, behavioral tells were currency. A glance, a pause, the weight of unspoken debts. Vincenzo set his glass down, the clink sharp. Loyalty versus suspicion coiled tight, his possessiveness over the kids clashing with the syndicate's grind. Gino had been his anchor since the streets, pulling him from the gutter after the sister's death. But fractures started with trust's erosion. Pull your own logs, Gino. Every meet at the Heron, every call to East Side burners. If Rossi talked to you. He trailed off, the implication hanging, heavy as the snow piling outside. Gino's jaw tightened, but he nodded, pocketing the phone. On it. But boss, the kids, they're clean in this. Rossi dumped them to keep him out of the crossfire, thinking you'd spot the ink and pull them in. East Siders want you rattled, make you overextend on a holiday when crews are thin. He limped toward the office, but paused at the door, voice dropping. You showing them the mark? That's not just code. That's you claiming 'em. Vincenzo didn't answer, the words stirring the pull. Autonomy yielding to a found family's fragile bond. The bear's iron restraint bending for 3 small lives. He crossed to the guest suite, keying in the override. Inside, the lamp's glow bathed the room in amber. Linens rumpled where Sophia sat vigil, Marco and Rosa dozing against her. She looked up, eyes sharp despite the fatigue, the tattoo a faint shadow on her skin. Heard the noise, like sirens. False alarm. Vincenzo lied softly, kneeling to check the window locks, reinforced, but the storm's howl seeped through, carrying the sodium tang of streetlights below. Your papa's story. Did he ever mention a place called Blue Heron? Or a man with a limp? Sophia's gaze dropped, fingers twisting the blanket. Papa said the Heron was where deals went bad. Fought a guy there once. Irish, gold tooth. Said he'd watch us if things went south. Her voice wavered, fear laced with the code's echo, loyalty tested by abandonment's scar. Vincenzo filed it, rising as his burner vibrated, Gino's text. Logs clean. But one anomaly. Call to Declan burner, 6 months back. Rossi's check-in. The fracture widened, human error or deliberate, Gino's limp, the call, the intruder's escape. He stepped into the hall, dialing a secondary contact, an old guard remnant, off books, to verify. The line connected, voice rasping through static. Russo? Heard you fished up ghosts. Rossi's alive, hiding in a safe house off the river. East Siders holding leverage. The kids were bait to flush him out through you. The revelation landed like a gut punch. The threat organized. Rossi's death staged to draw Vincenzo in, shattering his unyielding front. But as he pocketed the phone, a new alert chimed. Garage breach, patrols engaging. Gunfire echoed faintly through the vents, muffled pops cutting the storm. Gino burst from the office, Beretta drawn. They're here. Convoy hit. East Side pushing hard. Vincenzo grabbed the kid's door handle, heart pounding. Was Gino's clean log a lie, or the real betrayal waiting in the shadows below? The penthouse trembled with the first distant crash, the Empire's walls closing in. Vincenzo's hand froze on the guest suite door, the brass handle cool and unyielding under his palm, as the distant gunfire cracked through the vents like brittle ice. The penthouse, once a bastion of calculated silence, now thrummed with urgency, the low rumble of engines revving below, the sharp tang of cordite seeping up from the garage levels, mingling with the vanilla diffuser's fading sweetness. Rosa stirred inside the room, a soft cry escaping, but Sophia's hushed voice soothed her back to quiet. Vincenzo's pulse hammered, the contact's words echoing. Rossi alive, the kid's bait. The revelation shattered the night's fragile puzzle, turning suspicion into a blade at his throat. Gino stood frozen in the office doorway, Beretta gripped white-knuckled, his face a mask of grim resolve under the track lighting's harsh glare. Convoy's pinned, Gino said, voice cutting the tension like a wire. 3 vehicles, east side plates, Declan's crew, pushing the barrier with a ram truck. Our patrols are holding the ramp, but they're coordinated. Jammers on the radios. backups delayed. He limped forward, eyes flicking to the screens where feeds showed chaos, taillights weaving in the snow-swept garage, muzzle flashes painting concrete walls in staccato orange. The storm outside howled in sympathy, wind slamming the windows like a battering ram, snow piling against the glass in drifts that blurred the lakefront into oblivion. Vincenzo released the door, the click echoing too loudly in his ears. Trust versus suspicion coiled tighter, Gino's clean logs now a glaring anomaly, the call to Declan's burner, the limp Sophia described, the intruder's easy escape through tunnels only insiders mapped. His code demanded loyalty to the found. These kids, echoes of his sister's lost innocence. But prudence whispered of fractures within, human error or calculated betrayal, eroding the Empire's foundations. "You called for the secondary team?" Vincenzo asked, voice level, but his eyes bored into Gino's, searching for the tell. A averted gaze, a too quick nod. "Already on it, en route from the docks. 5 minutes out," Gino replied, holstering his Beretta to grab a tactical vest from the closet, the zipper's rasp sharp. The air thickened with the ozone scent of overworked electronics, the HVAC straining as alerts piled on the tablet. Power fluctuations in the sublevels, a deliberate overload to mask the assault. "Boss, we need to move the kids. Panic rooms prepped, reinforced. Independent air." Vincenzo nodded once, the decision pulling at him like a riptide, autonomy yielding to the protective surge, possessiveness over these strays overriding the bear's isolation. He keyed the suite open, the door swinging silently to reveal Sophia upright on the bed, Marco clutched to her side, Rosa wide-eyed in her lap. The lamp's glow cast their faces in soft relief, shadows playing across Sophia's tattoo like a warning sigil. "Time to go," Vincenzo said, scooping Rosa without hesitation, her small arms wrapping around his neck instinctively. The toddler's warmth pierced the chill, a fragile anchor amid the encroaching storm. "Stay close. No noise." Sophia slid off the bed, taking Marco's hand, her eyes meeting Vincenzo's with a mix of fear and steel. The same spark he'd seen in the riverbank snow. "The bad men?" she whispered, voice steady despite the tremor in her grip. "Worse," he admitted, leading them down the hall, Gino covering the rear with his piece drawn low. The penthouse's marble floors gleamed under emergency strips, guiding them to the hidden panel behind the library shelves. A biometric scan, Vincenzo's thumbprint unlocking the seamless door with a soft pneumatic hiss. Inside, the panic room was stark efficiency. Reinforced walls lined with monitors, a cot, stocked shelves smelling of MREs and bottled water. The hum of a generator a constant undercurrent. No windows, just the sealed comfort of survival, the air recyclers whirring like distant breaths. Gino herded them in, sealing the door with a heavy thud that vibrated through the floor. 20 minutes of full lockdown. Feeds here are hardwired. Can't jam 'em. He tapped the console, screens blooming to life. Garage assault in full swing. East Side gunmen advancing under cover of the Ram truck's bulk. Vincenzo's patrols returning fire from barricades of overturned crates. A botched escort earlier in the night, patrols thinned for holiday rotations, had left them vulnerable, human error compounded by the storm's jammed exits and blackouts flickering the lights. Vincenzo set Rosa on the cot, kneeling to face Sophia and Marco. "Your papa's out there, fighting this. The men want him through us, through you." The words tasted like ash, the ledger of truths unfolding. Rossi's defection a feint, his disappearance, staged to lure Declan's ire onto Vincenzo, using the old guard ink as a psychological noose. Legacy twisted into weapon, his vow to shield innocence now the bait that shattered his unbreachable front. Sophia's eyes widened, but she nodded, clutching Marco tighter. "Papa said family doesn't run, but he left us." Her voice cracked, loyalty clashing with abandonment's scar, mirroring Vincenzo's own regrets. The sister's death a ghost that shaped his code, restraint amid the syndicate's ruthless tide. Gino cleared his throat from the console, voice tight. "Boss, incoming transmission, audio only encrypted. Declan's on the line, patching through our secure net." He hit accept, a speaker crackling to life, the intruder's Irish lilt filtering in, smug over the gunfire's backdrop. "Russo, you got my package? The Rossi brats. Cute touch with the ink, eh? Your uncle's ghost come callin'. Hand 'em over and your dock runner walks. Keep 'em and we burn the whole holiday gift, starting with your garage rats." Vincenzo's grip tightened on the cot's edge, the wood creaking. Surveillance chatter confirmed it. East Side snipers on the rooftops, distant figures in the snow under sodium lights, their scopes glinting like predator eyes. The environment turned hazardous, storm winds whipping powder that blinded the patrols, a staged blackout plunging half the garage into shadow. "Declan," Vincenzo growled into the mic, voiced the bear's rumble. "Kids aren't chips. You touch my people, your fish market's ash by dawn." Laughter barked back, tinny and sharp. "Your people? Like that limp dog Gino?" He sang sweet 6 months back. Rossi's check-in was my hook. "Legacy's a bitch, Russo. Shatters easy." The line cut, leaving silence thick as smoke. Vincenzo whirled on Gino. The betrayal confirmed. Internal fracture. Gino's logs a lie. The call to Declan, the pivot that ensnared them. Gino's face paled, hands rising, but the console beeped. Secondary team breaching the garage, convoy lights piercing the dark. Gunfire intensified, a scream echoing through the vents. "You sold us," Vincenzo said, drawing the Glock in a fluid motion, the room's air turning electric. Gino's eyes pleaded, loyalty's ghost flickering, but suspicion won. The code bent, but not broken. As the kids huddled, Rosa's cry piercing the din, Vincenzo leveled the barrel. Was Gino's turn the final shatter, or just the spark that ignited the true war below? The monitors flared with incoming reinforcements, but the East Side's push surged. A warehouse inferno blooming in the distance, staged fire diverting aid, trapping them in the storm's vice. The panic room's monitors bathed the space in a staccato glow, red and blue flashes from the garage assault painting Gino's face in accusatory hues. Vincenzo's Glock held steady, the suppressor a dark extension of his arm, the metallic tang of gun oil sharp in the recycled air. Rosa's cry cut through the tension, muffled by Sophia's hand over her mouth, Marco's wide eyes darting between the men like trapped prey. The console beeped relentlessly. East Side reinforcements pouring in, the ram truck's engine roaring as it splintered a barricade, patrols falling back under a hail of suppressed fire. Outside, the storm's howl blended with the chaos, wind slamming snow against the building's underbelly, jamming the service ramps with drifts that turned escape routes into frozen traps. Gino's hand stayed raised, palms out, his Beretta forgotten on the console. The limp seemed more pronounced now, a vulnerability exposed under the hardwired lights. "Boss, listen." Declan twisted it. "That call was to warn Rossi off, not sell him out. I covered it in the logs to keep the heat low. Protect the kids from the start." His voice cracked, gravel worn smooth by desperation, eyes pleading in the face of the bear's unyielding stare. Loyalty versus betrayal hung in the balance, Vincenzo's code fracturing under the weight of shared history, the streets they'd clawed through, the vows forged in blood after his sister's death. But the intruder's escape, the jammer's precision, Gino's hesitation. Human error or calculated turn? Suspicion coiled, pulling autonomy taut against the syndicate's inevitable rot. "Prove it," Vincenzo snarled, thumb flicking the safety off, the click echoing like a verdict. Below, a secondary explosion rocked the screens. Staged diversion at the garage's fuel depot. Flames licking up concrete pillars, smoke billowing thick and black, choking the infrared feeds. The East Side convoy surged, Declan's men infiltrating the lower levels, their boots thudding faintly through the vents like an advancing tide. Rossi's safe house intel burned in Vincenzo's mind, alive, but leveraged, the kids the true prize to shatter his legacy. No easy out. Victory demanded cost. Exposure ripping through his armored world. Gino moved slow, deliberate, pulling a secondary phone from his vest. An old burner, unmonitored, its screen cracked from years of pocket carry. Rossi contacted me direct, 6 months back. Said Declan was forcing him to skim loads, mark the kids for leverage. I stalled him, fed false manifests to buy time. Here's the thread, timestamps, locations. Blue Heron Meat was me trying to flip him back. He slid it across the cot, the device skittering to a stop near Sophia's knee. Vincenzo snatched it, eyes scanning the encrypted texts. Gino's warnings, Rossi's pleas, coordinates to a riverfront safe house matching the contact's tip. No East Side handoff, just desperate containment. Gino's limp a red herring from a warehouse fall during a solo stakeout. The realization hit like the storm's gale, suspicion yielding to fractured trust. Gino hadn't betrayed. He'd buffered, his code aligning with Vincenzo's. No innocence, even at personal risk. But the cost mounted. Patrols down 2 men on the feeds, one slumped against a crate, medkit too far in the blackout zones. Why hide it? Vincenzo demanded, lowering the Glock fractionally, the room's air thick with the ozone hum of failing generators. Feared you'd cut me loose, Gino admitted, voice raw. After the split, I lost faith once, doubted the old guard. But you kept the vow. These kids, they're us, back when we were ghosts on the docks. His words pierced, legacy's echo. Power restrained by internal rules, past losses shaping choices. Sophia watched, her tattoo a silent bond, the serpent's coil mirroring the tension uncoiling in Vincenzo's chest. Alarms wailed anew. Breach at the sublevels, East-Siders tunneling up through the service shafts, their flashlights stabbing the dark on split-screen views. Declan's voice crackled over the intercepted net. Flush the bear's den. The heirs are the shatter point. Vincenzo holstered the Glock, grabbing the console mic. Gino, override the fire suppression, flood the tunnels with foam, bias extraction. Gino complied, fingers flying, the system groaning as chemical mist deployed below, choking the infiltrators in a whiteout haze. But the cost. A patrol scream cut short. Exposure sealing alliances as feds would trace the flare-up by dawn. Secondary teams through, Gino reported, screens showing dockside reinforcements breaching the garage rear, their SUVs plowing snow like battering rams. Vincenzo pulled Sophia and Marco to their feet, Rosa clinging to his leg, the group's weight a found family's anchor. We move now. Service elevator to the helipad. Rossi's waiting at the river safe house. The door unsealed with a hiss. The penthouse hallway a gauntlet of flickering emergency lights. Shadows twisting like serpents on the walls. Gunfire echoed closer. Muffled pops through the floors. The building shuddering as the ram truck breached the lobby barrier below. They sprinted, Gino covering the rear, his limp slowing but not stopping him. Loyalty's limp, earned in silence. A East Side gunman rounded the corner from the stairwell, ski-masked and armed, but Gino's Beretta barked first, a suppressed round dropping him non-lethally to the knee, the thud lost in the din. No graphic end, just the haze of conflict, human limits exposed. Vincenzo scooped Rosa, Sophia's hand in his free one, Marco trailing Gino. The service elevator dinged open, doors closing on the chaos as bullets pinged the frame. Up top, the helipad whipped with wind, snow stinging like needles under the landing light's sodium glare. The chopper thrummed to life, blades slicing the night, pilot a trusted old guard remnant waving them in. As they lifted off, Chicago's skyline receding, a blaze of fire and patrol lights below. The East Side push faltered, Declan's convoy scattering under the secondary team's counter. But victory stung. The penthouse compromised, feds inbound on the disturbance, Vincenzo's empire scarred by exposure. Rossi waited at the river house, alive but broken, his defection a coerced lie to shield the kids. Declan escaped into the storm, a lingering threat. But the true shatter, Gino's hidden burden, mending now in shared silence. The chopper banked over the frozen river, safe house lights winking like a promise. Vincenzo held the kids close, Sophia leaning into him, the tattoo's weight a symbol transformed. Not ownership, but chosen bond. Legacy endured not in power's raw grip, but in the code that outlasted betrayal. Protection forged in crisis, a future pledged amid the ruins. Rossi emerged as they landed, face gaunt under the porch light, tears carving paths in grime. "You kept them safe," he rasped, embracing Sophia, the reunion a quiet vow renewed. In the house's warmth, crackling fire, scent of pine and stew, Vincenzo watched Gino tend Marco's scraped knee, the limp a badge of endurance. The night had cost territory, trust's fragile rebuild, but the treasure gleamed, safety and unity, commitment etched deeper than ink. These strays weren't ghosts. They were family, reclaimed from the cold, loyalty's memory outshining the syndicate's shadows. As dawn broke, pale over the docks, Vincenzo felt the shift, ambition yielding to prudence, suspicion to bonds tested true. The bear remained, but softer, his code the light that shattered the dark. Subscribe to our channel for more incredible tales of loyalty, danger, and found family. See you in the next story.